Good morning. Let's wait a few minutes for anyone else to join us, and then we will begin. Okay, I think we can start right now. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jorge Romero from University Jorge Tadeo Lozano. It's a great honor to welcome you to the 5th Latin American Sdewes Conference. I'm very happy to see many researchers here today working for a sustainable future. This year, we are meeting in the beautiful city of Cartagena from January 18 to 21. I hope you enjoy the history, the warm weather, and the hospitality of this wonderful place. Okay. The main organizers of this event, I want to thank you, the institutions that make this event possible. First, the University of Zagreb, the Instituto Superior Técnico from Lisbon, and the Sdewes Center. Their dedication to science is the reason we are all here together. Also, I want to thank the another institutions or local partner where I belong is the University of Bogotá Jorge Tadeo Lozano. I also want to give a special thanks to some colleagues in Colombia like Consuelo, Edgar, and Jeanette at the University of Bogotá Jorge Tadeo Lozano. Their hard work in Bogotá and Cartagena is essential for this conference. As you see in this map, although we are in Latin America, our research is global. We have experts connected from many parts of the world, showing that sustainability is a goal we all share. According the statistics of this event, we have some very good numbers this year. 129 participants from 31 different countries and 78 cities. We also have people from about 18 universities, institutes, and companies join us. The flag of every country in this event, you can see it right now. Here's a flag of all the nations represented in this meeting. Seeing so many different flags from Argentina to Japan and the USA show the strong global commitment to finding new energy solutions. The Sdewes family is constantly growing. Since our first meeting in 2002, we have organized dozens of conferences to share scientific knowledge and build new partnerships. The conference history regions, we have a long history in Europe, and our Latin American series is now in his fifth edition. After successful meetings in Rio, Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires, and Viña del Mar, we are proud to continue this tradition in Colombia. Also, we have partner journals. Thank you. A very important part of our conference is publishing your research. We work with many high-quality journals, and so far, 3,000 and more than 3,000 papers from Sdewes have been published. We invite you to be part of this big success. First, the most important one is J. Sdewes. I want to highlight this journal, which has an impact factor of 2.3 for 2024. Also, please check the Journal of Sustainable Development Indicators, which started in 2024 under the leadership of Professor Goran Kraknik. I'm saying it well, sorry. No? Okay, sorry. Also, we are starting with another journals, Journal of Sustainable Development of Natural Resource Management from 2025, and Journal of Sustainable Development of Smart Energy Networks this year. And it's important to say there are some rules in our conference, because this is an on-site and also an online conference. Remember the rules. You can watch the presentation for the online event until January 30, but you must ask questions by January 29. Most importantly, authors are obligated to respond to all questions on the platform between January 19 and 31. Once again, welcome to Cartagena and to the 5th Latin American Sdewes Conference. I wish you all a very productive week with great ideas and new collaborations. Thank you very much for your attention. Now we have the pleasure to hear Professor Neven Duik with his presentation, The Role of Renewables in a Country Rich in Fossil Fuels.
Thank you very much, Jorge Ivan, for this introduction, and it's great to be again in this lovely city of Cartagena. This is my 5th time. I really fell in love with it 10 years ago. Well, whenever I talk with Colombians, I get an idea that Colombia is a country rich in fossil fuels and renewables are just a sidekick. Yeah, there is a lot of hydro, but whenever is La Nina, El Nino effect, then there is drought, so they need a lot of fossil fuels. So let me see what is a good solution for a fossil fuel rich country, which I don't think Colombia actually is. But let's discuss these issues. What is happening now is that the cost of renewables has fallen significantly, and on the basis of levelized cost of electricity, solar and wind are by far the cheapest energy sources which are available. Gas, this is American cost, which is relatively low, but it's already twice more expensive than wind and solar. In Europe is double that. Coal and nuclear are terribly expensive. So why would one want to use fossil fuels if there is plenty of renewables? And this is what is happening all over the world. Everybody is moving to renewables. Probably around 95% of investments in 24 were in renewable capacity. So most of the world has already switched to renewables. And there is one technology that is very easy to add, rooftop solar. Electricity is quite expensive in Colombia. So why do I see so little rooftop solar? Around 950 gigawatt of rooftop solar was installed in the world, and it powered on 190 million homes by the end of 24. It's good investment for those that can. They have money. It's much better than keeping your money in the bank. And it's also a very good poverty reduction measure to subsidize rooftop solar. It's a cheap solution to reduce energy poverty. So if you have poor people, give them some PV panels and they don't have to pay for energy. This is an incredibly easy tool for improving their situation. But I don't see many. There are 200 megawatt approximately in Colombia for a 50 million people country. In last year in Pakistan, they installed 17 gigawatt. And they moved from 1% of solar energy to 25% of solar energy in one single year, because this is what you can do with solar. It's very fast. Per capita electricity generation for solar, it's very high in some countries and low in other countries. So it's a policy thing. Country has to decide to allow solar, but it's starting now in many countries. Well, there is an issue with rooftop solar. Okay, you have very nice rooftop solar that is producing electricity during the day, but you actually need it in the evening. So we need some kind of a mechanism, let's say net metering or net billing, or batteries, which is more expensive if you put batteries and save during the day and then use it in the evening. You can also heat hot water during the day. Everybody needs to take shower. So instead of heating water after taking shower in the morning, you heat it during the day when there is nobody in the house, and then use it the rest of the day. You need a little bit bigger hot water reservoir. You can also charge your EV with this electricity. For example, on Saturday or Sunday when you're at home, you just charge it during the day, and that's enough for a whole week of driving. Some areas have already reached quite high penetration of solar energy. For example, a small nation of Tokelau is since 2012 running on 95% of solar and batteries, of course. It's 2,000 people, 3 atolls. They have no cars, so it was relatively easy. But if it can be done on a small island, it can be done everywhere quite easily. And we can see there are many now territories which have, Pakistan is now 17% in 24 from 1% in 23. Everything that is above the green line is more difficult to integrate. What is down under the green line, it's easy to integrate. You don't have to do much, little bit of flexibility. But above that, you need either batteries or demand response or some other good solution. When we come to wind, the situation is even more interesting. We have territories which have 300% of wind electricity. How is that possible? Well, that is compared to their consumption. Rio Grande do Norte is a state, very windy state in northeast of Brazil, very good wind, and they were importing 100% of electricity from Pará, from the big hydropower plant in Pará. And then they built wind, and now they're exporting 2/3 of this wind. It can be done. They already had all the infrastructure, they had the grids, so it was easy there. But we can see there are many territories which have quite significant penetration of wind in the world. So it can be done. Everything what is under the green line, it's easy. What is above the green line means you need to invest in some technologies like interconnections, batteries, storage, demand response. You can see, for example, Denmark, and I think we will hear a bit more during invited lecture after this opening today. But there are some excellent cases in Latin America. Uruguay, 48% of wind energy in its consumption. And they did it in a few years. You can do it easily. It can be done. The problems are, of course, technical. And this is why engineers have to know how to solve those problems. So let's say we have a system in which we have base loads, which is the black electricity, so could be coal or nuclear, for example, and we have intermediate power plants like gas or hydro, which cover peak load and intermediate load. And then we add 25% of wind and solar into that system. The pale blue line is the load. So what happens when the wind is usually blowing more in the night, even in Cartagena, and the solar is, of course, shining during the day. So in those hours, wind and solar push out the base load. So what can you do with this base load? Well, you can export it, but probably everybody else will have this problem. You can store it, but that's expensive. The best thing is not to produce it. So you don't need base load. You need flexible load. We still need some solution for the afternoon, but this is only 25% wind and solar. What happens when you put a lot of wind and solar in the grid, your electricity price in those hours goes down, even to zero or even negative. So in many territories, you have negative hourly prices in many hours. For example, South Australia or Victoria have 24% of negative prices. What can you do with free electricity? Many things, many things. And it's now becoming also quite common in Europe to have negative prices. What can we do with these negative prices? We'll come to that later. But what is happening in Europe is that coal is collapsing. We don't need coal. Coal is expensive to build. Coal is very dirty. It's a base load, so it's being pushed out by wind and solar. And it's just closing down. By 2030, we think that most of coal will be closed down in most of countries in Europe. And if you look at this map, you can see all these green countries, they already closed coal or they will close it by 2030. Other countries will close it a little bit later, but we are basically abandoning coal. because it's completely incompatible with wind and solar, and it's also quite dirty and bad for climate. And we can see that where are the jobs. So here we will have problems with miners, but we already have programs to find new jobs for these miners. So this is called just transition. We have to move those people, but we lack workforce in Europe, so that will not be a huge problem. Basically, one interesting fact about 24, I put the wrong year, it's 24. There was installation, no, it's actually 25, yes, already new data. 625 gigawatt of solar was installed in 25. So that's 50% more capacity than all the nuclear installed since 1954, when the first nuclear power plant was built, in just 1 year. And then you have the previous year was like 550 gigawatt. And then the next year. So every year we are adding more solar than we ever installed nuclear in the history. Why is nuclear so expensive? Well, each power plant is specific to the location. So you have to build it in a different way. There is no economies of scale. Most of the new ones are also first of the kind. What does it mean, first of the kind nuclear power plant? That means you have to build everything from scratch with new technology, which is untested. So the first of the kind usually costs double. And if you build a new first one in the country, that also costs double, because you also have to pay for education, monitoring system, legislation. All this has to be built. It's a huge apparatus that has to be built. So the reason why it has become so expensive is that the regulation has become serious, because we had some accidents: Fukushima, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island. I hope we are now building really good nuclear power plants. But the problem, the builders are not serious. They make a lot of mistakes. So you need 10 years to plan for a nuclear power plant, 6-7 years to build it, and then it takes 10 years to remove all the errors that were done by the builders. So it takes around 25 years now to build nuclear power plants. That can be shortened. We have cases of China and Korea, which built without problem 6-7 years, but they build a lot of them. They have experience. It's very hard to gather this experience. We lost it in the West. And that's why the most of the cost is the cost of capital, because you build it in 7 years, you spend all the money, and then you're still repairing it for 10 years, and you're not producing electricity, and you're paying very high interest rates. So this can be improved, but it's very difficult to improve it, because you have to build the whole sector before it gets improved. And what happened in the meantime, while we are all discussing, shall we build nuclear everywhere? Now it's so popular, is that solar is now producing more electricity on a global scale than nuclear. It has overtaken nuclear. Our good friend and the good guy, Bill Gates, he has a very funny idea that we should stop investing in new technologies while we wait for nuclear to develop. That's a very crazy idea, very dangerous idea. What does it mean? That means that in case of nuclear scenario, we will stay until 2050 with fossil fuels. So our emissions are going to go up all the time and only slowly start to fall down after 2050. So we will burn the earth with climate change before we actually start doing anything. While we have a solution and we can push into renewables now, we are already doing that, and quickly reduce emissions by 2050. Which solution is better? Well, depends what do you think, but there is a very good paper from Breyer and his group from Lappeenranta University in Finland that optimizes every single country in the world and region on what are the best sources for local energy production. And it comes out that solar is mostly everywhere the best. I don't agree completely with it. So you can discuss the methodology, etc. But it's not very far from true. Why solar is the best for the tropical and subtropical areas? Because you have a relatively constant insulation all year around. So solar batteries are actually cheaper than gas now. And that solves the baseload problem, flexibility problem, and all problems you have. If you go more to the north, we are very much in the north in Europe. In Croatia, it's a 7 times difference in insulation between winter and summer. So we could overbuild solars for 7 times, but it's actually cheaper to go wind. Because wind and solar, if we combine it together, we only need to overbuild 3 times. So that's why these green areas with the solar wind mix. Colombia is a solar place, but doesn't mean you don't have to build wind. You can build wind everywhere, but you can do everything in the cheapest way with mostly solar. But I'll come back to wind issue. So we have a problem of how to integrate those variable renewables. And of course, we need more grid interconnection. So this is something Latin America should be working on. You need to flexibilize thermal power plants so to be responsive. You need wholesale markets to make it as cheap as possible. We need demand response and integration of power, heating, cooling, transport, water, and industry systems in something what we call smart energy systems or Power to X. And this integrative approach has, in a way, started from this conference in 2002 in Dubrovnik. And we need, of course, dedicated electricity storage, but we want to use it as a last resort because it's more expensive. One of the interesting part for Colombia is electric cars. You already have quite a lot of renewables, and you're probably going to have much more. Electric cars are run on electricity. So, renewable electricity powering electric cars means you have an excellent match between 2 technologies. And electric cars are coming. They're already making 20% of the global market. And in Colombia, for example, last year it was 9% of the sales of cars were electric and plugged-in hybrid cars. So Colombia is starting the transition. We can see Uruguay is better, 30%. They seem to understand dynamics. But we have a problem. If we put all the cars electric and all of them all people come home at the same time and plug in at 7 kilowatt charges at the same time, this will drain twice the installed capacity. This is on Austrian example. It will never actually happen that everybody comes home at the same time because most of people are stuck in traffic very often. But anyway, we will need smart charging for that. And that's why our system has to become smarter. But the easy way to make it smarter is just to have variable price. So you charge on your solar rooftop or on a grid electricity which has variable pricing. We still have quite a few solutions in order to completely decarbonize our economies. Shipping, it is not going to go on batteries, at least not long distance. So we will need e-ammonia and e-methanol. Aviation will go to sustainable aviation fuels. You will soon need to start selling those fuels in Colombian ports that operate with European Union, because European Union has obligatory 2% alternative fuels or reduction of CO2 actually. And then fertilizers, which are going to go to e-hydrogen or e-ammonia, metal smelters either to electricity or e-hydrogen, steel mills to electricity, cement and lime to e-hydrogen or maybe electricity. Chemical industry will move to so-called methanol economy, and other industries mostly on electricity and hydrogen. So it's a great time for new technologies. And you can see it here. We are quite sure that these technologies will go electric. These will need hydrogen, and for this we're not completely sure yet, but it will be decided relatively sure. And then let's look at the map. Colombia has excellent offshore wind potential. Also, Guajira Peninsula has onshore. So what about using this huge capacity to produce hydrogen and to produce methanol? What is the advantage of Colombia compared to Chile? Chile has much better solar potential and also wind potential, but doesn't have biomass. So Chile will probably be exporting ammonia, but Colombia has a possibility to export methanol. Methanol is going to be a huge market. What is being predicted is ammonia and methanol are going to replace maybe like 10-20% of the current fossil fuel market being exported and traded on a global scale. So wind and solar have come. They will certainly be main primary energies in the future. They are variable, not so easy to integrate. Electrification of industry and transport is a solution through demand response. And coming back to the question from the beginning, since fossil fuels are much more expensive than renewables, for a country that has a lot of fossil fuels, it's much better to export them. We are going to need fossil fuels for the next 50 years, for sure. We cannot just stop using fossil fuels. There are so many cars in the world that are based on fossil fuels, so many industries. Transition is a slow process. So you can make much more money exporting fossil fuels than using it at home. Use at home what is cheaper, renewables. And I would really like to see some research coming from Colombia about the potential of wind offshore wind methanol exports. Thank you. And this is my office in Cartagena. Whenever I come to Cartagena, whoever knows where it is, I pay a drink. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Neven, for this interesting your interesting presentation. Now we have the pleasure to hear the Professor Isaac Diner with their presentation named Necessary Transition. Professor Isaac.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of you for being here. We are very happy to have this audience and this participation in this conference. You will help us understand better energy transition and all issues related to this. After what Professor Neven has mentioned, perhaps I shouldn't talk, you say. I mean, he said everything about energy transition worldwide and even mentioned particular issues related to Colombia. But I'm going to say a bit more And it's because the particular issues in each country should be taken into consideration. And I'm going to mention some and to try to get you to do that the same in your countries. Of course, my countries are two, Poland and Colombia. And so my Polish colleagues don't say that I'm a traitor. No, 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 no. Poland as well. And I haven't done anything about Polish electricity, but I'm going to mention what we've been doing in Colombia, and we hope it's helpful, because in Colombia there is big opposition from industry and from government to move ahead with this transition, regardless of many issues that I'm going to mention in my presentation. So, Necessary Transition, it's a book that I just published a few months ago, and with colleagues, and this is after research, detailed research about the Colombian issues. And with this, I'm trying to get more audience and more support in this effort to move towards the transition, but for reasons further than the environment. And that's very important to understand. And that's what I believe this makes it necessary, not only for environmental based situations. So first, the story, very quickly, what Professor Nevin went through. Well, the issue is that emissions and temperature are related, and then the crisis is there. So the Germans were crazy and started thinking, well, we should do something about it and move the opinion worldwide. And they said, so we're getting down the prices of electricity coming from sun and from wind. And then batteries in support of that, and batteries are with solar are cheaper, even in the United States, where this is cheapest in terms of gas, electricity produced by gas. And then so the world has moved into more electrification of with renewables. And then as Professor Nevin mentioned, we have wind, solar over taking coal in terms of capacity, and then renewables overtaken fossils in the worldwide scene. So that's the world scene that Professor Nevin mentioned. So the future will continue to be. I mean, the learning curve of renewables are becoming are making progress even more so. So the range, the difference between cost will be larger. And what has been very interesting is that solar and wind have overtaken in terms of the speed of transition all over technologies, and all of you. I mean, this is the audience that is specialized about these issues, so I'm not saying anything new. So in the near future, what we would get is mostly solar and wind solutions, and this is going to happen regardless of what the President of the United States say, and because of the reality of the economy of the worldwide issues. So the future, if not derailed, which I don't understand what can derail it, but maybe, I don't know, it would be a transition towards sustainable development based on renewables, because not only environmental issues, social and economic reasons. And so that would be the electrification of society and the economy, leveling the field for the social issues that Nevin mentions. Most of you that come from Europe don't understand, I think, the issues in Latin America, and particularly Colombia, which I'm going to mention further. So welfare inclusiveness is an important element, education, and I'm going to mention why this is something that we should consider, particularly in Colombia, but in many other countries around the Latin American continent. Technology, science, bringing down barriers, institutions. And so is this a must worldwide? I believe so. But you have to prove it in each particular case. Otherwise, people are not going to do it, particularly in Colombia, where we find lots of opposition. So the progress in continents, Latin America, believe it or not, is leading. It's leading over Europe because of the hydro-based resources we have. But so this is Latin America, and this is Europe behind. But in terms of the new renewables, that's not the issue. So in terms of countries that have based on renewables, you see Colombia is 72% based on average producing electricity from renewables. But that's hydro, and hydro is making lots of damage in a sense, and I'm going to go in depth into this. So Latin America is well placed, but is that meaning that we should stop doing this? So Europe is moving in the right direction, having been fossil-based economies. Yes, I believe so. It's an example worldwide. Latin America, maybe. Countries like Brazil and Chile are doing their job, much less other countries like Colombia. And why? This is my article on Saturday. Don't do more. Don't keep doing harm to the energy policy. And because I've been doing this for the last 5 years, publishing in the newspapers saying, you know, we should continue doing this, what we're doing, not moving ahead fast enough into the right policy for transition. So the book is part of the program that I have with my colleagues to make more sensible people, so more sensitive towards these issues, and not only for the environmental reasons, and that's very important, and it's mostly other reasons. So the book is the renewable for inclusiveness and sustainable development. That's what the book is all about, and this is the 6 chapters, and what we say is the same story. We have now cheaper electricity coming from the sun, cheaper electricity come from wind, and worldwide that's what's happening. But Colombia is the last of a bunch of countries in Latin America in terms of making progress towards renewables. And why? Because of opposition, not because we don't have the resources. We have among the best resources in Latin America. All right. Chile, Atacama is much better than anywhere else in Colombia, but Colombia has excellent solar resources, excellent wind resources, compared even to North or East Brazil, as Nevin mentioned. So if this is the program for Colombia, we should move from 20 gigawatts of electricity to double by 2032. And mostly, you see, solar and wind, and almost nothing of anything else. So we should move ahead, but we're doing it very slowly because of permissions and because of laziness of the government to support these plans. But here's the trick. This is the most important slide I have in this presentation. And if you have the potentials of Colombia, it's good luminosity, wind, and geothermal and biomass. Geothermal is very important in Colombia. I would say, although it's not that much, it's sufficient to help support wind and solar intermittency. Here, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Mexico, and Peru. What are these countries? The ones that are OECD countries or are in the process of becoming OECD countries. No other countries in Latin America like that. And what is Colombia? worse indicators. Am I happy about this? No. Is the government happy about this? I don't know, but they don't seem to care. And what is it, the reason for this? And I'm going to be very emphatic about this. Electricity. Why? Demand, electricity demand per capita, lowest. Chile is more than twice. Argentina, twice. And the rest of them are higher consumers of electricity. And then you see IE arguments, and they say it's structural. Structural, no, it's poverty. And it's poverty in terms of consumption. And we are going to see GDP per capita. Chile, twice. So if you don't have cheap electricity, you don't have enough economic base installed in Colombia. And that's what industrial people should be claiming. So it's worse GDP per capita. Human Development Index. That's terrible because it's education, it's health, and it's income per capita. Worse than all of the rest. Should it be like that? No. What is the fault? I'm claiming electricity. And unemployment, highest. So energy poverty, distribution of wealth, worse. So I'm not happy with this. And the government shouldn't be happy, and the policy should be wrong, is wrong. So we should move ahead and change things, because this is a potentially very rich country in Latin America, and it shouldn't just stay quiet as it is. And what it is in terms of electricity cost, the average compared to the rest of Latin America is higher, 20% higher. And the average worldwide is higher. Should it be like that? No, it shouldn't. Human Development Index, here is Colombia, and here is Argentina, all above Colombia. So it's compared to energy consumption. So if you don't consume enough electricity for welfare and for economic reasons, you stand behind. And poverty, this is what is bad. I mean, people pay about 17% of their income, poor people, for electricity. Is that correct? No, it's not. It shouldn't be less than 10%. So that's a definition of. So the methodology, the science behind this is the shell-based approach for scenarios. So we did green democracy, a Greta scenario, the house in flames, and extractivism. And if we did system dynamics, so it's based on differential equations. So it's not the best solution, but it's a feasible solution, what we do when we do system dynamics. And based on that, and we found the simulations, and in the simulations, the world should be different. And this is detailed simulation, hourly based, for now until 2050. And what we found is that instead of consuming 20 gigawatts, we should consume, this installed capacity, 5 times as much from now until 2050. And instead of electricity use, we should move from 240 gigawatt hours per day to at least 560 gigawatts per day. So it's several times the amount of what we should do today. And in the hourly base, the heart of it is, as Professor Neven said, is solar, of course. And but it's a combination. It's more than what Professor Neven said. I'm going to show you this, because it's not only hydro, wind, offshore, solar, gas zero, coal is zero, geothermal. Geothermal is interesting. We could produce up to 2 gigawatts. And 2 gigawatts that of geothermal is very interesting, very interesting. And biomass, a bit of biomass, and then lots of batteries. We need batteries because hydro is not good enough. It's not good enough, it's not sufficient. So we need to complement it with some more. And this is wind blows, emissions. So emissions by 2035 in our simulations go to zero. And apart from that is the house in flames. This is the extreme opposite scenario. All right, if we want to stay as it is, it's not going to be good for the country, but it's a solution. It'd be more expensive, of course, and the generation per day would be completely different. We would be consuming much more electricity, and for the good reasons, for economic development, for education, for health, for electrification of houses, electrification of businesses, and so on and so forth. And the detail of this is through sectoral based, is through a PhD thesis that here is Viviana, and she's going to show us the results later on during the conference. So the policy elements. So we go in detail policy, little by little, one by one. You do this, and you do this. It's not that for the government to do it, but as an example of how to do it. You have to illustrate this, otherwise, they don't know. And as the Brits say, you need a new engineering, of course. How to dispatch these 100% renewables and a variation or a variety of resources. You have to be smart and you have to learn how to do it, not to go into a disaster. So we have not only that, but a policy brief example of how to go about this. I haven't translated this from my book, and this is by 2035 how much you have to have of each to meet this transformation, and by 2035 you should be 100% renewables, more or less. And so in the end, it's not like what Colombians say. We pollute very little. And it's true, we pollute very little in terms of what we do for electricity generation. So my argument in the book is, even by polluting a bit less, we could get lots more electricity, cheaper for all, benefited individual, society, and the economy for a better country. It's got to be a better country. Or let's just change a bit, only with some additions. And I have a set of arguments from The Economist and from Krugman, the Nobel Prize, IAEA, and all of them concluding that it's not only for Colombia, it's not only for Latin America that would benefit for this, but the rest of the world. And this is, I don't know if you're familiar with this chap, who everyone knows, or what, except Nevin. Nevin doesn't like football. You do know him? You know what he says in Colombia? He is the Colombian hero. He's from not very far from here, Santa Marta. He says, todo bien, all is fine, all is fine. No, it's not fine. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Isaac, for your presentation. Now we are having an intervention of Professor Tomislav, who is going to tell us the rules of participation in the conference. Professor Tomislav.
Thank you, Jorge Ivan. Welcome, everybody. I'm very happy to be able to welcome you here on our Latin America Sdewes conference. I'll be quick. I will just tell you the main pointers about the conference implementation here. As you probably know, the Sdewes conference is a hybrid one, which means we have an online part and we have an on-site part, which required you to all film your presentations and submit them online. But whether you're online or you're on site here in Cartagena, the key issue is that you present your research. We are quite strict about that. So please be on time and do present your papers and your research, because people came here to listen to and to see what other people are doing. We are very strict about that, and in case we don't have papers presented, unfortunately they will be cancelled and they will not be eligible for special issues and journals. The same basically applies for the online part of the conference, the hybrid part, where all the questions that are asked within the online system should be answered. So this is the main rule that we follow. If you're the first time participant on Sdewes conference, you're presenting here, then you should know that in each of the rooms, in each of the sessions, we will have local organizing people around 15 minutes before the start of each session. So you just come 15 minutes before. They will copy the presentations, check if everything is okay, test and so on. If you are a chair or a co-chair, the same rule applies. So you just stop by around 15 minutes before the start of the session, and the local organizing people will have all the materials, documents necessary for chairs and co-chairs. They will be ready and prepared in the rooms, so you don't have to worry about anything. Since the conference is relatively small, everything will be happening here in the hotel. So on this floor and the floor below, we have 4 rooms in total. So we have room A, which we are sitting right now. We have room B, which is right next to us. And we have 2 rooms, C and D, which are on the ground floor. So you just go down the stairs and that's it. The coffee breaks will be served here in front of the registration desk, and lunch will be served in the ground floor in the hotel restaurant. For the lunch, it's fairly simple. You all got your lunch coupons, so you just take the lunch coupon and you give it to a hotel employee or member of the local organizing committee when you're entering the lunch. So it's fairly simple. And the other thing you have is the coupon for tomorrow's visit. So tomorrow we will have a social trip, and basically this coupon or ticket is your entrance for the social trip. We will have a sightseeing tour, and we will end up the social trip with a dinner in a restaurant, El Muello. It's fairly simple. An easy walk from the hotel, around I would say 10 minutes. It's really nice place on the beach. So tomorrow it's more or less a leisure day. We will have, of course, lectures in the morning, an invited lecture, but after that we will go for a social trip. Well, more or less this is the main information that I just wanted to comment with you. So please be on time. Please present your papers and your research. Do participate in the discussions. Ask questions in the online part of the conference. And finally, I'm very happy once again to see you all here in Cartagena, and I wish you all the luck in the conference implementation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tomislav. Now we move to the hour session. The hour session will be our session with the Professor Natasha Markowska. I'm pronouncing right? Professor.
Thank you, Jorge Ivan. Esteemed participants, I'm Natasha Markowska, serving as the chair of the Sdewes Award Committee. It is a great honor and privilege to me to extend a warm welcome to all of you to the awards session of the 5th Latin American Sdewes Conference. In this session, we came together to celebrate the remarkable achievements of authors within the Sdewes community. Today, we will recognize and honor the authors of the 3 best papers. This session promises to be a momentous occasion where we will acknowledge the outstanding work and dedication of our community members. Thank you for joining. Allow me to introduce the esteemed members of the award committee, all of whom are distinguished members of the Sdewes community. Professor Ofélia Araújo, Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Professor Felipe Feijó, Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso, Chile. Professor Antonio Piacentino, University of Palermo, Italy. Professor Ingo Stadler, Cologne University of Applied Sciences, Germany. Professor Alexander Zidanšek, Institute Jožef Stefan, Ljubljana, Slovenia. These dedicated professionals have played a crucial role in rigorous evaluation process to identify the exceptional papers for the Best Paper Award. The Best Paper Awards honor the highest quality research papers presented at Sdewes Conference. This time, we received 10 nominations by the editors or reviewers, covering nearly all archival papers. Each nominated paper was carefully reviewed and evaluated based on its scientific quality, originality, methodological rigor, and relevance to Sdewes topics. After a detailed review and scoping process, the awards committee selected 3 outstanding papers for recognition as the 3rd, 2nd, and the 1st best papers. Now, without further delay, let us proceed to unveil and celebrate the outstanding authors of the 3 winning papers. This time, we have 2 papers sharing the 2nd and 3rd place. The 2nd, 3rd best paper award goes to Optimizing Climate Responsive Building Design using surrogate models and neural networks under future climate scenarios by Ivan Garcia Cerdan from Mexico, together with his co-authors. Their research develops an integrated, data-driven framework that uses simulations and neural network surrogate models to efficiently identify building design strategies that improve energy performance, comfort, costs, and emissions under future climate scenarios. The recipients received the book Solar Energy Engineering, Processes and Systems by Professors Soteris Kalagerou. I think the author is not today here, so maybe we could invite him to join us through the cloud and say some few words. Please. Do we have the author?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
I don't know. Can you hear me? Sorry. Can you hear me? Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, very well.
Perfect.
Please,
Perfect.
Ivan
Perfect.
Verda.
So I will
Okay.
start again. Maybe if you didn't hear me, I want to thank again the program committee, and also the reviewers for giving us the great feedback. I also want to thank the co-authors and also our institution, El Tecnológico Monterrey, not to supporting this research. To the conference, I mean, I was I remember the first Sdewes conference in Latin America in Rio de Janeiro back in 2018 or 2019, I don't remember well. And it's really great not to see the conference still going on. Hopefully, once we can receive in Mexico, maybe in the following years, we will be really, really happy to keep supporting the conference and always looking like really great research. So thanks again to everyone and good luck on the conference.
Thank you. Let's meet in Mexico in 2028.
Oh, yeah, hopefully.
Okay. Can we move further with the presentation? The other second, third best paper award is presented to a novel multi-criteria decision-making approach for assessing sustainable heat generation alternatives in high mountain regions. It is a case study of Berlin, Colombia, by Ana Maria Rosso Cerón from Colombia and her co-authors. This research develops and applies a combined optimization and multi-criteria decision framework to identify cost-effective and low-emission heating solutions for high mountain communities, balancing economic, environmental, technological, and social criteria to support sustainable local energy planning. An innovative and well-structured contribution with clear relevance for sustainable energy planning in challenging context. The authors received the book Sustainability in the Process Industry, Integration and Optimization, edited by Professors Jiří Klemeš and Peter Varbanov. I now invite the first author to the stage to receive the award and address the audience. You want to address the audience? Maybe a few words? No? And now, the first best paper award. It goes to multi-scale wind solar energy assessment with infrastructure cost integration, a case study of Bolivia, by Pablo Jimenez Zabalaga from Belgium and his co-authors. This study develops an integrated multi-scale methodology that combines high-resolution wind and solar resource assessment with infrastructure-aware cost modeling to inform national and regional energy system planning in data-scarce contexts. A highly innovative and policy-relevant contribution that effectively bridges detailed spatial resource assessment with realistic infrastructure and system-level planning. The recipient, the authors received the book Renewable Energy Systems, Smart Energy Systems Approach to the Choice and Modeling of 100% Renewable Solutions by Professor Henrik Lund. If the first author is here with us in the stage, I would like to invite him here to receive his well-deserved award.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to thank also the reviewing committee, also my research team, all the co-authors, and especially thank to my mother and my girlfriend, and they are always supporting me during the long hours of work in the PhD. So yes, mostly I can say that the most important result that we have of this research is that global reanalysis datasets like ERA 5 requires to do some bias correction in order to estimate adequately the wind resource potential, because otherwise it is quietly underestimated. Thank you.
Thank you. One more applause for this excellent contribution and the authors. Congratulations once again to all of them. Finally, I would like to highlight the strong geographical diversity reflected among the selected papers. The awardees represent 3 different countries: Belgium, Colombia, and Mexico, spanning 2 continents, Latin America and Europe. It is particularly meaningful that the host country, Colombia, is represented among the awardees, reinforcing the regional relevance of this event. I'm also pleased to note the presence of a female first author among the winners, contributing to improved gender balance and the visibility of women in sustainable development and energy research. And as we conclude this award session, on behalf of the award committee, the entire Sdewes community, and myself personally, I extend our sincere congratulations to all awardees. Please join me in giving them a warm round of applause to celebrate their achievements. And now I would invite the awardees and the present members of the award committee to the stage for a joint photo. And with this, I officially close the award session. Thank you all for your participation.
Just a quick note, after the photo, now we will have a group photo in front. So we can go outside. The members of the local organizing committee will show you. We will have a group photo on this level around the stairs. So it's like 5 minutes, and then we go for coffee break. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomislav. With this, we conclude this part of the event. Thank you all very much for attending. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Recording stopped. hola, sí. Hola, hola, sí. Hola, hola, sí. Hola, hola, sí.
Recording in progress.
It's okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, it's rather loud. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I will do that. Yeah.
So we are going to start in 2 minutes. We're waiting for everyone to come from the coffee break, and then we'll begin. All right. We are going to start with this plenary. So it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Brian Van Matisen. Professor Matisen holds a PhD in fuel cells and electrolyzers in future energy systems. His research focuses on technological and socioeconomic transitions to renewables, energy storage, large-scale renewable energy integration, and the design of 100% renewable energy systems. He's one of the leading researchers behind the concept of a smart energy system, electrofuels, and heat roadmap in Europe. He has published 250 scientific articles and reports, and is one of the Clarivate Web of Science list of highly cited researchers, those among the top 1% most cited researchers globally. In 2022, was the most cited researcher in Danish media across all topics. Among other positions, he has been part of the European Union Commission Expert Group on Electricity Interconnection Targets and the Science Advice for Policy by European Academies, Expert Group on a Systematic Approach for Energy Transition in Europe. He's a research coordinator of the Sustainable Energy Planning Research Group. He has been PI or Principal Investigator, Work Package Leader, and participant in more than 75 projects in Europe. In 2012, he founded the Master of Science program in Sustainable Cities at Aalborg University. Furthermore, he's in the editorial board of the Journal of Energy Storage, the Journal of Sustainable Development of Energy, Water, and Environmental System, Associate Editor of Energy, Ecology, and Environment, Editor of the International Journal of Sustainable Energy Planning and Management, and he recently started the new Elsevier journal, Smart Energy. In addition, he's a member of the Danish Academy of Technical Science, the Advisory Board Think Tank Europe, a board member at the Danish Energy Technology Development and Demonstration Program, Radius Elnet, and Senior Fellow in the CIP Foundation. So it's my pleasure, and please welcome in joining Professor Matisen in the presentation titled The Geopolitical Challenge on the Way Towards European Smart Energy Systems.
Thank you. I have here, I guess. Can you hear me? Does the sound work? I have to put it up a little. Okay. You can hear me? I need the clicker. Do you have the clicker? Thank you for welcoming me here to the 5th Latin American Conference, Sdewes Conference. I'm very happy to be here. It's a great honor. It's my first time in Colombia, not my first time in South America, but I look forward to some nice speeches here the coming days. I was invited to make a talk about the European energy transition, where it's not only the technologies that are transiting, it's also the political debates. And I'm from a small country of Denmark, which is a small part of the much more vast area-wise kingdom of Denmark, which also includes Greenland. So the kingdom of Denmark is very, very large and larger than Colombia. So it's just to put a bit of weight behind my words here, but also to make you understand that we are in probably the largest foreign policy crisis since the 1800. So it's very, very tough, and you can see that the changes are not only technological, the changes are also in the political debates, which means now we're talking more about geopolitics than climate politics. So maybe we can talk a little about this. since it's so topical right now. I flew in last week and I took this nice picture, and it kind of alludes to also what Nevin said earlier. This is a piece of democratic infrastructure that is going to disrupt most of the developed world, whether legitimate or corrupt suppliers of electricity, poor people, middle classes, everybody will want to have a PV on the roof if they can. And you can go actually also to Google Maps and you can see this in a lot of places. So it is also happening here, and probably this will accelerate in the coming years. But there are some local researchers here who of course know much more about this than I do. As you know, in Europe we have used energy for a long time. The European Union in its current form was made up in the 90s, and I would say energy policy in the European Union started in the end of the 90s with the common electricity market. And after that, there has been gradual build-ons to what we do in common between the 27 countries in the European Union and what the individual countries do. But it is the responsibility of each individual country to do their energy policies. It is not the jurisdiction of the European Union to do that. Having said that, there are many collaborations between the countries. We have had quite a lot of success in some of the elements. So what you see on this graph up here is the increase in the amount of renewables since 1990. So this is really something that increases the security of supply, but at the same time, all of the other elements have gone down. The domestic internal EU production of coal and oil and natural gas has declined for a very, very long time. And at the same time that we have higher renewables, we have also increased the energy efficiency. And I'll come a little back to this. We have had no improvements really of our security of supply, because even if we have a higher efficiency and we have more renewables, we have so much less fossil fuels that our security of supply is around the same level as it was 20, 30 years ago. It has not really improved structurally because we're still so dependent on natural gas and oil particularly. The Juncker Commission in 2015 said they wanted to diversify the gas supply for Europe. That failed miserably, as I think it's clear for everybody. So there's really a lot to say about what happened before the invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022. The dependency was particularly large on natural gas, and the thing is, when you can transport something and you can pipe something, it can become very, very cheap. If you have a source and you can simply put it in a pipe to Central Europe, it becomes really a cheap commodity, which is a lot of interest in having, also knowing that you have to produce something. You can see here the oil and gas lines going across the eastern plains of the European continent, and they are all sort of from the north part of Russia. I don't know if any of you remember what happened in the summer of 2022. It's not actually on the map. There's a line here, not on the map. I'm not going to ask questions because the format is not for it. But there's a line in the Baltic Sea here that actually goes up here from near St. Petersburg and down to the German coast, and it's called Nord Stream. Nord Stream 1 was opened in around 2011, and then they decided to build Nord Stream 2. And what happened was that in December 2021, so before the invasion, this was actually completely ready. But at that time, the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, he actually chose administratively not to approve it because he wanted it to be this, separate companies that were operating it. And this also was done in January 2022. So Nord Stream 2 was never opened. Nord Stream 1 was operating, Nord Stream 2 was never opened. And then in the summer of 2022, it was bombed, or there was an incident, or there was an event, or there was a terror attack, depending on how you view the world. In any case, it's not able to operate. And I would just like to remind everybody that all of those lines that are going with natural gas through Europe, they could have actually been abolished with the startup of Nord Stream 2, which would have completely changed the geopolitical dynamics in Europe and the collaboration within the European Union, because the interest would have changed completely, and all the agreements could have been made by the anytime sitting Chancellor of Germany and the dictator in Putin in Russia. So this is just to say, it is very, very political when you are so dependent on a single source. And actually, we're really dependent on oil and coal as well. In February 2022, something else actually happened, because as the invasion started, everybody seemed to forget a little about COVID. But what had happened during COVID was that the European Union had really started to work tightly together with vaccines and measures against contamination of people. And this sort of very tight working together and fast working together was really convenient, because in May 2022, the Commission could set out a policy and initiatives called Repower EU, which is a response to our dependency on Russian natural gas. We were 45% of the natural gas in Europe came from Russia. So that was really a lot. So Repower EU had 3 policies: energy efficiency, electrification, fuel switch, so going even from natural gas to oil or coal if needed, but of course mainly other sources, and then the last one, deployment of renewables. And it has been actually a rather huge success. There's a structural sort of decline of 20% in the natural gas consumption over a very short time period. But when you look into the numbers, there are maybe some challenges here still. So if you want to understand the natural gas consumption in Europe, it has 3 parts. So one part is the electricity grid. The second part is for lukewarm water for heating houses. And the third one is industry. So that's around 1/3 to each. And when we see a 20% fall, structural fall, that is mainly due to the deployment of renewables. So this is a huge decrease of natural gas consumption in the power sector from deployment of photovoltaics and deployment of wind power. Then there's also a slight decrease in heavy industry, so ammonia has been moved a little out, and there's a slight decrease there, but we have had very little success in changing our heating system, very little success in general in electrifying industry and getting rid of natural gas there. So there's still really a lot to do. Up here, you see the up here you see imports of natural gas to Europe, and you can see the bottom one, the red one, is Russia. Some of the countries close to Russia had 100% consumption of Russian natural gas. Some in the western part of Europe had very little, of course. So this is a European picture. But you could see the dependency was very high. We get a lot of gas from Norway that was increased slightly. Then we get some from northern Africa, so for example Algeria. But then after this invasion and to handle the crisis, a part of the Repower EU initiative was to expand our capacity to import liquefied natural gas. And this is where you see, for example, US liquefied natural gas is playing a larger and larger part here. And right now we get around 1/3 of our imported gas, a little more than maybe 40% of our imported gas from the international liquefied natural gas market. So of course that is a challenge. Just to highlight that Repower EU has been a success again, you can see a small dip here from the fourth quarter of 24 to the first quarter of 25. And that dip is the stop of the gas going through the war zone in Ukraine. Maybe some of you know there was an agreement, especially for some of the Central European countries, to actually have natural gas through Ukraine. Ukraine did not want to renew it. We didn't really want to renew it, but that nobody really heard about it. Also in Europe is a big success. That you can close a big line like that for a part of Europe where there should be protesters. That is quite amazing. Of course, there were a few noises, but it didn't create a big media disaster or anything like that. So I think that tells us that it has been a rather big success. When we then look a little ahead, maybe we have to just understand a little more about what is actually going on here. Now, everybody in Europe would know what this is. This is the content of natural gas storage in our storages. So what will happen is we use a lot of heat and we use a lot of natural gas in heating. We could not import enough during the summer to heat our houses in the winter, so we would fill up our storages in the summer and then gradually use it in the winter. And that's where you see these sort of waves. And the big focus in the beginning of this crisis was, are we able to heat our houses and supply our industry? So this is a really, really big deal during 2022 and 2023. But we are in a very good place, actually. And up, so down here you can see the orange line. There's still quite a significant amount of storage of natural gas in so this goes to the first week of this year. Up here you see the consumption per month of natural gas, and here you can see the orange line, and you can see it's rather low compared to all of the other lines. So we're in a good place. Up here, I can see maybe it's a little hard to see, but up here is a graph of where we get the liquefied natural gas from, and it suffices maybe to say that the light blue one is the United States, and it has increased quite a lot. And then you have the red part, which is Russian natural gas. And the Russian natural gas goes to the international market for liquefied natural gas, maybe through India, maybe through some other countries. It's a little hard to know exactly what goes on. There will be a complete stop for natural gas. Also, hopefully from the liquefied one, it may be a little hard to control, but there are really huge initiatives so that this will end in the end of this year. But we have a big challenge. We have had progress with Repower EU. The Fit for 55 is the target to have reductions of 55% in the greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And there has been a lot of successes here, but we're still 60% dependent on imports, mainly natural gas and oil. and we are very, very dependent on liquefied natural gas. And I made this slide before what happened after New Year about Greenland, and actually I made it this wording here, I made that in 2023. So, but I think it really holds through that we are very much subject to what happens in the world about tariffs or trade wars, and I think we're in a really risky situation. So this is a problem. If one good thing should happen out of this is to bring back attention on this problem, because on the top one here you see the natural gas prices, and you know what happens with the natural gas prices having this this sort of structure. You can see the big peak that is of course in 2022 and during the crisis, and also part of 2023. You can also see it falls, and it's not as low as it was before the crisis, but it relatively has fallen. And you know, people's attention span is about 3 months, and the politicians' attention span is also correlated to those 3 months, unfortunately, which means that when we have seen the natural gas prices fall, the attention on this transformation is shifted. It's diluted, it's not enough, it's not there. Maybe if something good should happen out of this current situation with Greenland and the chaos in NATO, it could be that we get back on track with focusing on this. Of course, the REPowerEU policies are still there, but even though the policies are still there, you need to screw on the nuts and bolts and do a quality check and make sure things are happening. The Commission has full speed on this. This is in the member countries a big problem. They don't have enough attention when the prices seem to be lower. What is for sure the case is that the prices will fluctuate in the future. They may be low sometimes, but they will also be high sometimes. So this is just a brief overview of where we get our products. So oil, more than 90% imported, a lot from Norway and the US, otherwise Kazakhstan, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia. Natural gas, 85% imported. Coal, 100% imported. As Nevin said, it's very little though, so it's not that big a problem. Uranium, imported. So those who correlate nuclear power with good geopolitical situation, I'm not sure they have read the textbooks. Of course, this can change, but it's not easy to change. And then you have renewable, which is primarily like domestic within Europe. So of course you can see that the challenges are really, really vast. So what we want to make sure is that we do things in the short term that help also the long term. So we need to have a really big strategic focus on this. I guess everybody heard about the Draghi report. Now the Draghi report is a comprehensive piece of work focusing on Europe's competitiveness and strategic autonomy. But the work in that report is not really something that is completely new. There's been initiatives on batteries and materials in the Commission since the late 2010s, at least middle 2010s. But this really highlighted it, and it put increased attention on it. And this combined then with this geopolitical situation, I think, makes everybody understand in Europe and stand more together in Europe about what we have to do. So right now, national and international security policy is on the top. So this is about geopolitics. It's about economic sovereignty. It means we have to actually have economic power to be able to sustain things. It's about the industrial policy. Then there's a security of supply element, which is also connected to this, cybersecurity. We have all of this debate about materials, sourcing, processing of materials and supply chains. These things the prices are falling a little again after the war started, so it's normalizing a little, but we still have challenges in this respect. And then you have everything else, those small challenges like biodiversity and climate change and health effects. that some people, I guess, also care about. But luckily, I would say you have to understand that solving all of the other problems goes really well hand in hand with solving the problems with regards to climate change and other environmental issues. This is just an example of, you can go and have a look. There's a homepage, EU homepage, where you can go into each material and have a look about what is the status of this critical raw material. This graph over here shows where different materials for the transition are from, and the red part, I guess you can guess is China, which has a significant power, especially in the rare earth department, but also in quite a lot of other less critical materials. But as part of this response, the Critical Raw Materials Act was inaugurated, or was put through, and as part of this, there are some benchmarks that the EU is targeting, and this is being done actually with investments, with concrete investments. So 10% of EU's annual consumption has to be EU extraction. 40% should be processed in EU. We have to recycle more, and we cannot be more than 65 dependent on one country, which is, of course, quite a lot. But the year 2030 is also very, very close, I would say. Now we turn a little into sort of the renewables part, and I put this slide here on what is happening in Denmark. So we have now almost 60% wind power and probably around 10% PV in the electricity grid. So this is quite substantial amounts. It's really a lot, and I can tell you we don't have any blackouts or any problems with it. It's functioning very well. But of course, there's always debates about this. So right now the debate in Denmark is a lot about, so how can we get even more up? And I would say this is a little silly. So if there's a politician that wants to be green in Denmark, they would like to put up more PV and wind power. But this is a little wrong. They have to focus on other things. In my opinion, we solved the renewables part more or less to the extent possible in the electricity sector, and we have to then have a growth of renewables as we grow the electricity consumption. So if we exchange a fossil fuel car with an electric car, and we do a lot of that, then we need a little more electricity, and that should be the growth rate. We don't need a 20% growth rate. We can't sustain it, and I'll come a little into why that is. But what's important to understand that Denmark is also a little of an outlier. I'll come into that in a minute, where I compare to some of the other EU countries. When we do the transition and when we want to have better competitiveness in the EU, of course it's important we choose the cheaper electricity production option, and this is from Lazard, from a levelized cost of electricity. And you can ask me afterwards maybe what are the system integration costs, and then you have to combine with batteries and whatever. So we can go a little into that, but you have to understand that if we have an energy system that is mainly based on electricity and not burning fossil fuels, the system integration part is so minute and small compared to the overall cost of the electricity production. So you want to focus on enabling a lot of the cheapest options on renewables. And now Neven already talked a little about it. PV, especially utility scale, are very, very cheap options in many parts of the world. In Europe, onshore wind is cheaper in many places compared to PV. And after that, we can also see we have offshore wind, which is down here. This is an American. This is an American consultancy who makes this. So of course it reflects a little what's going on in America. So when you compare onshore wind here, 37 is the lower one, $37 per megawatt hour. PV around the same. Then it's almost twice when you look to offshore. That would not be the case in Europe. That price would maybe be 30% higher compared to offshore or something like this. So for sure you want to focus on the cheaper option. Down here you have then the different sort of power plant options: gas peaking, US nuclear, coal, combined cycle gas. And what we want to do is we want to try and enable a lot of these to come into the grid because they're cheaper option. Just to talk a little about nuclear, here you can see in most studies it's around 3 to 5 times more expensive to build nuclear compared to renewables. But this requires an operation time of 8,000 hours per year, so 75-80% if you can. So and this is not very well fit with renewables. So from a systems perspective, you have a choice. You either go for renewables or you go for nuclear. It is not so that we want to build nuclear to support the renewables, because if we support the renewables, then the operation time goes down and you can times the cost, the capex of the nuclear with the lower amount of hours that you would use it. A lot of the time you hear nuclear is cheap. That's because it's apparently very hard to understand the marginal price market you have to have on an electricity system. But even in this study here in Lasat, they put a number here. So I don't know why they do it, but they have this number here, 34. This 34 is assuming that all of this is written off. So this would be the marginal price. But for me, it's a little strange to have this number here, because I'm missing the 0 on the wind and the 0 on the PV up here. So if we imagine some kind of imaginary bank that comes down from the moon and pays for the nuclear power plant and says, now you only have to pay $34 per megawatt hour, I would rather have they paid for 5 times the amount of renewables and said you have to pay 0 for that. So this creates a lot of trouble in my opinion to understand this. Yeah, this is just an example of in Europe we're looking a lot at the North Sea to build out offshore wind. There's really a high potential for onshore wind, but in certain parts of Europe, in Northern Europe, there is a need for so much energy. We also need to look into offshore, and there are studies about making these offshore energy hubs. Some call them energy islands, and these are offshore energy parks, maybe above 5 gigawatts. So it's rather large, really large production sites. Another thing about the electricity supply from these renewables is how different they are. Now, in this part of the world, PV, of course, can dominate the system. But as Nevin said, when you come up north, we need more supply of wind power as well. So if you have a PV in Europe, or at least in the northern part of Europe, then around 85% of the production will be within half a year in the summer and in the daytime. And there'll be very little production in the winter time. And we use more energy in the winter time. And here actually wind fits in very well. The wind is here, a production curve is blue. You can see it's slightly higher in the winter time. And when you design the system, it's really important to understand these elements, and we call it the capacity factor. So if you have 1 gigawatt of PV, in Europe, maybe it's around 15% capacity factor or full load hour, however you prefer to call it, whereas the onshore wind would be between 25 and 40%, depending on where you are in Europe. And this has a huge impact also on how you design your electricity grid. And when you have penetration rates of 65% renewables, this becomes very, very important. In Denmark, our peak demand right now is around 6 gigawatts. It's nothing compared to many other countries, but just 6 gigawatt. We have 5 gigawatts of installed solar PV. Do you think that those 6 gigawatts of peak demand occurs on a summer day? No, it does not. This creates a huge problem, of course, but it also creates a good situation because it means we have a lot of PV in those hours of the year where the sun is not shining so much, but where we still have this capacity. So it does help the system overall. It's just important from a design point of view. Yeah, it's a little hard maybe to see this, so I'll try to explain it. If we see the Danish system is often looked to as a sort of a role model as what you can do, but in effect Denmark is a very, very small country surrounded by countries that have 4, 5 times, even 20 times the electricity demand than we do. Of course, we don't have full connection with these countries, but we have connections with the countries. If we had no connections, we would not have 65% wind and PV. We would have somewhere around 45-50%. That would be the maximum in the combination of wind and PV. So from a structural point of view, also when we lose a lot in the summer and all of this. This means that if you transfer the 65% to all of the European countries, you're doing a really bad mistake. So you can't take that as something that you can simply copy. You can do something, but that's changing the demand side. I'll come a little into that in a minute. This is wind power, and this is the Danish wind power here. This is the EU average, so we have almost 20% wind power in the grid. Down you have Bulgaria, Italy, France, Austria, Romania, Poland, Croatia. Up here, Ireland, an island system, by the way, where they have very significant shares. Portugal, Germany, Netherlands, Spain, etc. So this expansion of renewables that we see after the invasion of Ukraine is really what helps us reduce the consumption of gas. But it also has its limits. So on average in EU, I would say we're not able to go to the Danish side. We're maybe able to go to the 40 or 45% until we change the demand side. So that's of course an important part of this. I think I'll skip that. This is the primary energy demand in Europe, and there has been some relative successes in this structure. You can see it's falling a little. That's both due to this ammonia not being produced and a few heavy industries not there, but it's actually also due to the 20% wind power. So what happens in the beginning when you put up a wind turbine is that 1 kilowatt hour of wind replaces 2.5 kilowatt hours of coal or natural gas because of the losses in the power plant. So you have a structural efficiency gain. We can also see that we have better houses, so we heat maybe 20-25% more square meters compared to 25 years ago. We use the same amount of heat for that. So buildings are better in Europe than they were in 2000, for example. There are some challenges. The electrification in Europe is going really slow. Heat supply remains really highly based on boilers. We have too little energy efficiency still. There's really a lot we can do. And when you look at this graph, I think it's important to understand that the electricity consumption is a smaller part of this. So what I talked about before, the 20% penetration in electricity sector of wind power, for example, the electricity sector maybe around 25-30% of this overall demand. So it's eating into the existing electricity demand. So what we want to do when we design our system is to eat into all of the other demands in industry, in houses, heating of houses, in the transport sector, etc. We have done that in the Danish case, where if you compare the European continent to Denmark, we are around 20 years ahead from a system design perspective, I would say. And here you can actually see quite a large decrease. There are three reasons for this being constant during this time, actually. So one is the insulation of buildings. The second is the use of district heating. And the third is the upscaling of wind power. And what you see after this period here are actually the effects also of the electrification of transport, but mainly actually also of heating, where you see that the primary energy supply is actually decreasing. I don't know if you know, but in some of the European countries, PV is a really big debate. But it's funny to see on this graph. It's a really big debate in Denmark as well. We had municipal elections and a lot of people were thrown out of office due to PV. But this is the amount of PV in the overall system. So it's really not that big. It will be bigger, but not 10 times as big, of course. Anyway, so what has started to be done here in Denmark is to redesign the system so that we're integrating this in a smart energy system where we combine the different energy carriers, gas, district heating, and the heating to the electricity sector as well. The goal is we aim for 50% reduction of CO2 emissions from 1990. We achieved that, and in 4 years we aim for a 70% reduction of greenhouse gases. So in 2030, and this is going to happen. It's on track, mainly with known technologies, actually. But it also means that the whole energy sector, more or less, has to be decarbonized. There will still be industry, there will still be transport, there will still be agriculture. But to achieve the 70%, the electricity that you can get from the grid and the district heating and most of the heating system actually needs to be changed. But this can be done, and it's being done. One of the things that's important is to understand the storage. So in this system, which is not dominated solely by PV, the storage becomes very important. And we can see that thermal storage is 100 times cheaper than electricity storage. And we can also see that bigger storages are much cheaper than smaller storages. So the trick is to use bigger storages and thermal storages. And we need hot water in the future, so we might as well produce it and store it as best possible. So this is what we're trying to do. In the old days, you would say that we would have wind power and provide the electricity, and then we would have a thermal storage tank here where we would get through the district heating our hot water, and we would stop the CHP plant. Then over here, when we have low wind, we would run the CHP plant, we would fill the thermal storage, we would still get our supply over here. This is a little outdated because actually we don't need the power plants as much as we did in the past. in the future, we need to have power plants that operate maybe 5 to 15% of the time. We can still use the excess heat from that, but it's not always correlated with when we have the heat demand, and we can't have a heat supply based on it. So we have to change this, and one way to change it is to have a large-scale heat pump in the heating system. So as you know, a heat pump has a good cup of 3 or up to 5 or even higher if you have a good heat source. What you want to do is to have big heat pumps, combine them with thermal storages, and then you're actually able to supply much more of the heat compared to a system where you have so much combined heat and power. So this is the installation in the Danish system of heat pumps and electric boilers. So over here you can see the electric boilers, and on top are the heat pumps. Electric heating is not a good idea. So these are not operated very much. The price is 0 or below 0, they will operate these. But these up here, they are the heat pumps, and we will have quite a lot of heat pumps coming up in the coming years. But you can see already now we have the possibility to have a flexible demand combined with thermal storage of more than 2 gigawatts, which is quite a lot. So we can immediately activate 2 gigawatt of demand when we have a large amount of wind power or PV in the system that we need to take. And we use it productively because it's then stored to provide heat at another time. So this is how we want to try and redesign the system. And this is actually happening. So I visited Aalborg last spring, and I was kicking these big metal cans. So these are simple metal cans, 2 layers, very, very simple thermal storage. And they can provide heat for a city of 200,000 people for 1 to 3 days in the wintertime. Not in an average day in the wintertime. And that means you really create quite a lot of flexibility. So this is for 200,000 inhabitants, and they have a heat pump of around 67 megawatts provided by the company Main Energy, which is renamed to something I forgot ever. I can't remember what it's called, but it's actually based on Main Energy. You're not able to buy those heat pumps, so they are manufactured based on engines they put in drilling holes 3 kilometers, 2 kilometers down for oil, which have to operate, and they cannot be maintained. They cannot be fixed when they're there. They operate. And these heat pumps are done with exactly the same technology, just applied in large-scale heat pumps instead. So this is really an enabling technology. So when you see a thermal storage like that, that is the most important renewable energy integration technology. I think I spend a lot of time, so I'll just skip if I have more time. So what we also want to do is we want to store gas and liquid fuels. So some of you are working with Power to X, and now I talked a little about heating, which we can produce flexibly. We can also produce Power to X fuels flexibly. So if we want to have aviation and shipping in the future, we need to produce eSAF or ammonia or methanol for the ships. Now, instead of storing the coal on the input side or the oil on the input side of the ship, we store the product that needs to go into the ship. So we change the storage from the input to the output side. And this is really also a key enabler to enhance the amount of renewables that we can put in. And as I said in the beginning, the idea is to enable as much of the cheap electricity to come in as possible. So this is really, really important. And I guess you know the electrolysis process. There's been a lot of hype about how fast you can do the deployment of electrolyzers. Maybe we can go into that in the questions, but it will take 10 more years before it's scaled up. I think we in Denmark have now 2 plants on 22 megawatts of electrolysis or something like that, maybe 3. But they need to go to gigawatt size within 10 years, and I'm sure that they can. People thought it would be now, they would be gigawatt size. Then those people probably did not understand the upscaling is harder than what you can calculate on the computer. Yeah, so another important thing when we upscale this and when we want to integrate more renewables is to understand the locations of different elements. So you have the Danish map up there. The green dots represents areas where we have a surplus of electricity. And the yellow, renewable electricity, sorry. The yellow ones represents areas where we have too little renewables. So when you have more than 50% renewable energy, you want to start planning a little differently, because otherwise you end up with a copper plate. And it's really expensive to transport electricity. So if you want to deploy more renewables, they should be placed where you don't have a lot to begin with, so close to existing high demand hubs or new demands that you want to put together with the renewables. And if we don't do that, we will end up with a very, very expensive system, I would say. So this is sort of part of the new exercise. We're talking also about overplanting. So we have direct lines from an offshore hub to an electrolysis plant. It doesn't even go to the market. It's sort of outside the market. So there's a lot of thought going into this. Data centers are placed close to new demands, for example. So we need to have actually a rather good framework to do this kind of planning. We have applied these methods of this smart energy systems integration in several studies. So this is one recent study that our team did called HydroMap Europe, and this is this is sort of based on a redesign of the European energy system. Here you see the current demand, which is around 15 petawatt hours, and this is a future demand, which is around 9 petawatt hours. And what we do here is we do all of the principles that I talked about. What you can electrify, we electrify. If we can do savings, we do savings. If we can do sector integration, we do sector integration. And we apply the cheaper storage options. When we apply the cheaper storage options, the prices on the system level do not increase. They can decrease or stay the same. In this scenario, we calculated also how much wind, offshore wind and PV we need. Maybe we can debate that in the panel tonight. But you see, we actually installed here almost 2,000 gigawatts of onshore wind, which is quite significant. And also we installed 1,600 gigawatts of PV, which is a lot, but which is possible if you think about also the roofs. One key thing that we did here as well was to accept a much larger excess electricity than I thought we should. So normally, in our experience, we would say it's okay, you lose 5 to 8% of your electricity production. But we found, due to the falling prices of onshore wind and especially PV, that from an economic point of view, it makes sense to actually lose up to 15% of the production. Because the production is then also in the other hours compared to not only in the summertime, but in the other hours of the year. This has two effects. It has a lowering cost effect, but it also lowers the amount of hours power plants needs to operate, either on natural gas or biogas or some kind of biogenic material. So it's a new sort of design parameter, I would say. what we did in this study was to look specifically at the heating sector, so I'll go through that very quickly. We do heat savings of 43% in the houses over 25 years, and we look at how we supply the heat. The methodology we used for this study was to look at 3 different heat saving levels. We looked at geographical analysis of those future heat demands, so we know the heat demand in Europe down to 100 by 100 meters. We make a comprehensive assessment of waste heat and renewable heat potentials, and make geographical analysis of where they're placed compared to the demands. We look at then 18 different shares between more district heating or lower district heating and more individual heat pumps or less individual heat pumps. We look at different district heating supply mixes, and we do a lot of energy system analysis. And one of the results you can see here, I can see it looks a little strange on this one, but I'll explain it. This is the future heat demand if we have 43% savings. So you can gather that our current heat demand is somewhere up here. This graph here represents the potential of waste heat in Europe from a lot of different sources. So this is deep geothermal, solar thermal, CHP plants, nuclear waste heat, industrial waste heat, high temperature, medium temperature, low temperature, waste to energy plants, wastewater treatment plants, data centers, electrolysis, and some other few sources. When we pile these up, we have more than 3 petawatt hours of waste heat that is not used. We need to use that. If the temperature is right, we use it directly, otherwise we use a heat pump. In these analysis, what we did was combine energy system analysis with geographical analysis. We estimate that we are able to use 650 to 900 terawatt hours per year. This map down here shows the geothermal potential in different layers that we analyzed, for example. The key thing to make this happen is to expand district heating. You can't use waste heat unless you have something to transport the heat with. So we did a lot of analysis on that, and that needs to be expanded, and we suggest it's expanded to more than 50%. I would say from a research point of view, we could probably go a little higher. So this sounds like probably for most Europeans as really a lot, but it's a more pragmatic number than a lot from a calculating point of view. There are particularly high potentials in France, Germany, Netherlands, Spain, and Belgium. This is the percentage of district heating. Here's, for example, Belgium. Here we have Denmark. And here next to us we have Germany. So there are really quite a lot of potentials. Some that have very low potentials is Croatia, partly also Hungary. But all of this has to do with how far are the houses and the heat demands apart from each other, and how close are they. We have maps of this where you can go in and see, okay, we have a high temperature industry in this area. Should we that combined then with what's it called, where the heat demands are. Very quickly, this is the district heating production. This represents large-scale heat pumps, which you saw is being deployed already. So with the district heating system, and we can actually have almost 40% electrification. We have thermal storage. We use waste heat. More than 1/3 of waste heat is used, and we used around 10% renewable sources for heating. On a map, we have, for example, here the high temperature heat, industrial waste heat, and you can say, especially in the Benelux countries and the Ruhr district, you have a high concentration of heat that you can simply use directly into a district heating system. But there are many other places. This is only representing where there's a heat, waste heat, and where there's a heat demand in buildings. So there are actually more than this. They're just not close to the heat demands. So you can go in and I can send you the report. I would just like to mention that when we do this kind of system, we reduce the overall system cost by 2 to 3%, including the expenditures for vehicles. So that's the system level reduction when we have a smart energy approach. Of course, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you consider it's the whole system, and this is only the heating sector we're changing, it's quite a lot. For the heating sector alone, a redesign means 10 to 20% lower cost. And that will mean that some that have district heating will have much lower cost compared to today. So it really creates a much more resilient system. So if we want to attend to the geopolitical challenges we have, we need to try and harvest some of these very, very important redesign options. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for the very nice and interesting presentation. What we will do next, I'll go ahead with 1 or 2 questions, and then I'll open the mic for everyone here to ask questions to Professor Mattison. So first of all, on the geopolitical aspects and natural gas. Natural gas has been seen or proposed as a transition fuel as well. So do you see this natural gas, idea being a delay, idea or delay option for the transition towards renewable, and how much that delay can actually be basically influenced by the geopolitical aspect that you also discussed?
I think in some countries, what was done until the war started is a delay. Mm-hmm. But it's a little like saying, oh, don't you think electrification is a good idea? And then I tell you, no, it's not a good idea unless you do a smart electrification. But we don't want to heat our buildings with electric heating, right? Everybody knows that's a bad idea. But we want to try and have an intelligent electrification, maybe with heat pumps or combination of heat pumps and district heating. And the same thing goes for natural gas. It's a really bad idea to reinvest and expand the use of natural gas to heat houses. Mm-hmm. But it's a good idea to have flexible natural gas-based power plants that can support the grid, because there will be hours where we need capacity to support the grid. So I think the term, in my opinion, is too general. Mm-hmm. And people think when you say it's a transition fuel, then we should just use it everywhere we can. That's not true.
It can create lock-in effects also.
It can for some sectors, yeah. There are some sectors we like to be locked into a gas system somehow, which is the power sector. And those very few industries where you may need gas, which is actually, we found out that at least 75% of the European industry can be electrified, probably even more.
Thank you. Follow-up question on the smart system aspects. So I understand, from a European perspective and Danish perspective as well, that heat can actually provide a lot of flexibility in the heating sector. But if we think about the Latin American context, we are in a totally different environment. Even here in Colombia, it's extremely hot. Heat demand might not be as high as it is in Northern Europe. So we might not see as many possibilities to use the heating sector as a flexibility option in some countries. If we think, for instance, even Chile, which is in South Patagonia, there is a second issue, which is density of population is not very high. Basically translating into basically non-existing district heating at this point. So in the Patagonia, we don't have it. In countries like Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, probably we won't also have it. So what are the possibilities that you see actually in Latin America from the flexibility point of view, and how integration can actually be implemented in a continent like Latin America?
I think saying Latin America is too big. You can't say anything general like that. So we can look at Colombia, and I know here you also have a heat demand. Maybe it's a short heating season, but you do have a high heat demand parts of the season. And then the question is, do you have the democratic infrastructure to supply that with district heating, or don't you? So that's not a technical or economic thing. That's more an institutional and democratic setups thing, whether you're able to do it or not. And if you're able to do it, then you have to look at how can we supply district heat in that area. If you're not able to do it, then you have to live with that the system will become more expensive in that area. If we're on the coast here, the heat demand is non-existent. You have probably a large cooling demand. And there is a thing called district cooling, but district cooling applies for commercial centers. I would say where we are in this area, the cooling demand density here is by far high enough to create a district cooling system. But this also requires democratic and institutional setups where you are able to unlock that. But if you wanted to do a modeling about it, or to explain how much less cost you would have, sort of a key understanding would be high concentration of commercial cooling demands. You have to investigate district cooling. And what you can do is you can halve the electricity demand. So from an OPEX side of view, there's a huge advantage. Of course, then you have to weigh that up against the investments in PV, but you cannot have enough PV on this peninsula. So then you also have to include the investment in the grid, and so there's a lot of elements there you could take up. And if you're able to do that, you can actually have a cold storage system combined with the district cooling, and you can actually have a hot water supply as well. One of the best systems in the world for that is actually on the Stanford campus in the US. They implemented some of the Danish thinking of what we call fourth generation district heating, where they have, I think, 2 heat storages and 1 cold storage, and then they combine that. So things are actually possible.
One more question before I turn this to the audience. Something that we might also lack in Latin America, if we compare to the European system, is the power sector integration among countries. Many, power sectors in Latin America are isolated. We don't have many, installed transmission system across countries. So we are basically in many areas isolated. So how does this actually play a role in the transition, or do we actually need this, integration maybe from the transmission power sector point of view before going into sector integration, or we can do both in parallel?
So let's say you don't have the institutional setup or the democratic infrastructure to make district heating or district cooling, and probably not either to integrate on a regional scale the electricity grid. Maybe even in a country you'll have problems to combine areas, I would guess. If you have that problem, then you have to go aggressive on something else. And I didn't mention it in my speech here. I don't know if you know there's a levy in Europe on PVs from China. I think it's a bad idea. What I think we should do, we should have 10 years of full throttle on getting as much PV up as possible, then shut down and develop the new technology. And in a country where you don't have institutional setup properly, so you can build large infrastructure projects, I think it's the same. And what I showed on the picture from Cartagena is a piece of democratic technology employed directly to those who do not have the capabilities or the money to make any large-scale infrastructure project. So this is a complete, change of mind, and those in these areas here, also here in Latin America, where it's hard to connect those utilities that are stuck with coal or stuck with natural gas. They are in big trouble. Big trouble. Within 10 years, you will see a surge like you've never seen before. And what happens is that money flow is disconnected, which means that the power will change.
Thank you. So now I open the question for the audience. Neven, you can start.
By the way, I disagree with your need for democratic institutions for district cooling. Dubai is a
True.
beautiful case of one of the biggest systems. But my question is more related to the fact that you spent 1/3 of your lecture on geopolitics. And I agree with you. It's an important part. And we have basically solved techno-economic issues of the transition. It's all about social resistance, political resistance, delaying. But what I see as a positive factor is that we have 200 different sovereign states in the world, and they come at some point under pressure of the context, and technology is ready. What happened in 2020 in Europe, it happened in South Africa and Pakistan in the last few years, because they have very bad supply of electricity and they just moved solar. This is what you can see one by one country. Ethiopia built a big hydropower plant, and they decided they don't want to spend any more millions on importing oil. So they just banned internal combustion cars. And now it's flourishing electric cars in Ethiopia, one of the poorest countries in the world. So this is something that will, in my opinion, be a very strong push for the continuation of transition. We are going to see delay in some countries, but very quick change in other countries. What is your take on that?
But the reason I spend a little time on this geopolitical issue is that I think we need to expand the picture for those who make the decisions. And I don't think that a lot of the political systems in Europe know exactly how grave a situation we have. And there's this we have a little less focus on climate. Some parties have a lot still, but then there's a little less. And we have a lot of focus on Trump and trade and economic sovereignty. I visited the Commission in when was it? November, I think it was. I went to DG Energy, which is for sort of the ministry or whatever in the Commission, right? And I talked to the civil servants there. There's a normal speak we can have. Then I went to the Commission and Dan Jørgensen's cabinet. He's the Energy and Housing Commissioner, and the speak there was different. It was like Trump walked into the room. They're afraid of talking of things directly, and the first word that is mentioned all the time are cost reductions. So I think as academics we have an obligation to tap into what the concerns are, to explain how grave they are, and then present what are the real solutions on your hand. One thing that we can see happen in some countries is that they believe nuclear is a fast way out of this. I was so angry when I heard rather respectable politicians in the Danish media, for example, say that, oh, we want to have nuclear in Denmark to get rid of Russian natural gas. Okay, we start over. So so I think it's really important to tap into what's on the agenda. If I made a speech here talking about only climate change, then you lose half of those that actually can make the decisions, or maybe more than that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Please. If you can also introduce yourself.
Should I stand up?
Sure.
No?
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for your presentation. I'm Laura Mesestrada. I'm from Colombia, but I work in Germany. I just wanted to mention about the democratic institutions as well. In Colombia, we do have democratic institutions. I'm not defending this government because no, I think no one can. but I didn't realize the good things we had until this government came. So I think we do have the democratic institutions, but our problem is the corruption. And what you saw in this picture is corruption. They don't get to all the places. And yeah, although this government is destroying these institutions or trying to, hopefully next government will strengthen. So I just wanted to somehow defend what we have, maybe from Europe. I work in Europe. We are not seen sometimes as people with institutions, or the belief of our countries is far behind to what we really have. So I just wanted to mention this. And yeah, it's very interesting what you say. Thank you.
Any comments?
Yeah, so I mentioned democratic infrastructure and institutional infrastructure. I didn't say that it's not democratic or that they are not existing, but the thing is you need to adapt them. And there's an interplay between what needs to be implemented and the institutions or companies that are there, and the play then with the authorities and the governmental system. And so you were from Germany, or you work in Germany. In the traditional Germany, you will find, even in a democratic country like Germany, a very high connection between the coal mines and the CDU and SPD in Germany, where that created a big login to coal in Germany. And actually, the natural gas crisis we have in Europe is the same. So in Germany, the institutions were not for many years strong enough to be able to change this. They have changed now, gradually. So it doesn't only apply for for Latin America, but there is an interplay between the democratic institutions and setup and yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Please, over there. You can also introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ofélia Araújo from Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. My question is renewables. Brazil has a wrong strategy of investing in renewables, and it has been doing this since the 70s, way before energy transition was an issue. I would like to know your opinion about it, about renewables. Renewable fuels.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I didn't include this in my speak so much, but the modeling, for example, we do for Europe, that I presented the graph of, there are several parameters, but two of the main parameters are the cost, the overall cost that we can see, and the biomass availability. Because you cannot create a system only with PV and wind. You need to balance the system, and there are some elements you're not able to electrify. So in our experience with the research, it's very clear that if we don't electrify and use biofuels, then it will be completely unsustainable. I think around 12, 13 years ago, we did a lot of studies on land use and per kilometer traveled from different pathways, electrification, bioethanol, e-methanol, sorry, different e-fuels. And it's very clear that if we have a biofuel where we have not infused hydrogen together with the carbon molecules, then we don't have a sustainable fuel. If we have something we can electrify, our land use will be much too big. You can see not only in Brazil, but also in the US, they have a high penetration of biofuels, and it really creates a lot of land use that is completely unsustainable. In Europe, we have, in my opinion, built up an industry which will have sunk costs for many years, and I think we have to stop it. We have 10% blending in many places of bioethanol, which is a really bad idea. Either it's produced in Europe or it's imported, probably from South America, creating land use change down here. So we need to ban this. We need to move completely away from this. And in my opinion, it's better to use fossil fuels than biofuels because it locks us in to something that's completely unsustainable. Having said that, I think it's important to understand that now we talked a little about PV. PV wins because of the laws of physics. EV is going to win because of the laws of physics. So it's not a dangerous policy to move away from bioethanol. It's a good policy.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Natasha, please.
Okay, given the evolving nature of smart energy systems, do you believe that it's time now to introduce newcomers for being labeling as strategic infrastructure? Like, for example, district heating was mentioned, but also heating and cooling storages, digital platforms, and maybe even production capacities for batteries.
Yeah, so as part of the new, if we take the production capacity, there has been a battery initiative in Europe for many years. It failed a little, some of them, but actually there were 9 initiatives, and 2 of them we heard about, which both failed. But there's still quite a lot of battery initiatives in Europe. So, but you ask about also district heating, and I think it is a key infrastructure. If you see, I think it was 2 years ago, you had a blackout from 2-3 nuclear power plants which were not operating for a number of days, combined with a very cold weather in I think it was in Belgium or the Netherlands or something like this. There was a high dependence on electricity, and I think if we want to be robust and resilient, we need to use our resources more efficiently, but also it's actually more robust if we have several parameters of several energy carriers to work with. The problem when you talk about what is critical from the EU perspective is that heating is regarded as a national matter. So in my opinion, probably we need to enable it through the national states, and they need to realize that this is actually a matter of energy security.
Thank you. Nevin, do you have a follow-up?
Maybe to comment back on biomass and biofuels. While I fully agree with you that European biofuels energy crops are not sustainable, there are slight differences with Brazilian program. The difference number one is that photosynthesis efficiency of European biofuels is up to 2%. Brazilian bioethanol is 8%. And it's not fully energy crop, it's co-production. So it's a kind of way, if you have, if the price of sugar is too low, then you move to the production of alcohol. So it's a bit different. It's not as sustainable as using only waste biomass, but it's much more sustainable than a European approach. And another issue which I find important, while I'm not completely against all the biofuels charade in Europe, which didn't make sense from energy point of view, is because we will need a lot of carbon coming from biomass in the future. So you want to sustain some kind of use of biomass for energy purposes, but in the end, we're going to move that towards methanol.
Yeah, I disagree on both of those issues, I would say. So I think any kilowatt hour of biofuel you use also in Brazil is a bad idea. It creates a login for a system that needs to be dismantled. And it actually enables also Brazil to export cheaply to Europe if they have a surplus. So I think it's a bad thing. In Europe, the build-up of SAF production and bioethanol production does not unlock our ability to harvest the CO2. It's a completely different technology that is needed to extract the CO2, such as biogas or gasification or pyrolysis or technologies like that. Completely different supply chain technology strain compared to bioethanol. So I think we need to be rather harsh on those technologies.
Yeah, Isaac, final question, then we're running out of time.
It is to do with the institutional and democratic approach to this. And to introduce the panel in the afternoon, well, late tonight or in 6 o'clock or something like this, little mention about how important this is right now. I mean, we have made so much progress, and institutional progress, very little. Except for RIMA in the UK, I see nothing else being done in an orderly manner, and in academia is not discussing this. So tell me what you think.
In
about
what respect do you
in,
mean?
you know, how to go about it. Let me explain then a bit. For Colombians, that we tend to be very much against this transition in the academia, in industry and government. We say, you know, this is a failure, the transition, because of, you see what happened in Chile, what happened in Spain, what happened in the UK, what happened in the US. So this is a disaster. So we shouldn't take it on. So how do you move in terms of convincing that the institutions are in place and there is a roadmap that could be constructed, and the elements for having this as a success, regardless if you have a blackout of one day, that makes, it doesn't matter. But how do you build trust in this process?
I think I understand. So the role for me and for you is very clear. You need to explain exactly what happened and to break the myths. The Spanish case you mentioned, it has sparked so many myths, and it's being used by climate deniers, and also it's been used as a proponent for saying, oh, we should have had more nuclear power, and it has nothing to do with either of those. So the explanation comes out. It shows it's not what they thought, it's something else. But also, you need to then explain how you can solve it, and that it may happen again, but not to the same extent like it did in the past. So I think our role is to be very factual and punctual, to also say what is actually going on, because there's so many myths about what happened. So maybe some of you heard about the offshore wind tenders as well, or the hydrogen hype some of you may heard about. There's so many details that goes missing when you see the headlines in the newspapers. I don't have time to explain all of the elements in why some of these things fail or why they're not going right. But to tell a story that this is a disaster for the green transition is bullshit. There are so many successes, and we cannot let ourselves say it's a disaster just because something goes wrong with one or two technologies or is delayed 4 or 5 years. When you see so much PV, so much electrification, so much wind power, so many changes going around in many other sectors where we have a success, we have to be able to have a debate about those things that go wrong and still tell a story that we are on the right track, instead of focusing on a blackout in Spain, which was a disaster in those moments. But come on, what has the economic situation been in Spain due to that? It has been a big success. If they did not have that PV or that amount of wind they have, they would have been exposed to the world market of natural gas in 2022 and 23 to an amount that you can only imagine, not even imagine. Yeah. So I think we need to speak things up and be factual.
Thank you so much, Brian. So with this, we conclude the morning session. We go for lunch now down the hall. And I want to thank you again, Dr. Mattison, for your excellent presentation. So we have lunch now and see you in the afternoon. Thank you so much.
Recording stopped.